again, friends, and welcome back to my channel. My name's Amy, and I'm glad you decided to join me for chapter 66 and maybe 67 of the book that I wrote called Legends Orbs the Elements. This is a high fantasy adventure story, and I hope everybody had an awesome weekend. I know I did. My husband and I spent the weekend playing poker and eating pizza and just having a fun date night together. Yeah, it was so much fun. Oh, but you aren't here for that, so without further ado, let's just jump right into this adventure. Chapter 66. Nero had been sleeping peacefully until he heard the alarm bells tolling out the news of an intruder. He threw on his robes as fast as he could as he made his way to see what all the noise was about. He strapped his belt that held his Khopesh sword just in case of trouble. When he arrived, the captain of the guard was giving out orders. "Captain, what is the meaning of this? Who is down there?" the prince asked in a belittling manner. The captain did a smart, short bow. "My lord, just a handful of men. Can't be too cautious, hence the bells. We wanted them to know we were aware of their whereabouts." Nero raised a single eyebrow. The rest of his face remained devoid of emotions. Then he felt an uncommon feeling surging through his body. A feeling he rarely got. Doubt. Suddenly, he turned on his heels and made a beeline to the room where the black marble dragon statue was held. He was filled with shock and disbelief. "No! Impossible! How did they?" He thought frantically, trying to determine what oversight he had overlooked. He left the room as fast as he could. He strode with purposeful steps. He caught sight of the hunter and legend's back. The hunter was just slightly ahead of the legend, and at the last moment she turned to him and used both hands to hold up an invisible bow and arrow. Leon stopped mid-step. "Castilia, what are you doing? Come, we are almost out of here," Leon yelled. Castilia ignored or didn't seem to care or to hear her friend. She then released her fingers as if she held a real physical bow and arrow in her hands. Nero was prepared for this. He reached up one of his hands and grabbed air like he had caught the arrow. Leon blinked and stared wide-eyed as now there was an actual physical arrow in Nero's fist. The prince snarled at Castilia as he tossed it aside like it was a twig. "Impressive, legend. An invisible arrow. How quaint," he said in a provoking manner. He strode up to her so fast Leon didn't have time to react. "Shall we battle it out to the death, my lovely, or would you prefer the privacy of the fortress? His voice seethed with mockery. Leon spied Castilia with a dangerous look in her eyes. He shuddered to know what that look meant. "What? And let you have all the advantage? I think not. I choose here and now." Castilia's words were cold, hard, and emotionless. Nero shrugged. "Makes no difference to me. I know how it's going to end." With a snap of his fingers, he was now adorned in light armor. Castilia half turned to Leon. She was also reaching for her sword with the same motion. "Go, Leon. This is not your fight." It took all his willpower to heed his friend's words and rejoin his allies instead of standing with his closest companion. The two warriors both tested their blades by skillfully swinging them in circular motions. They started to circle each other like wild animals engaging in a fight for territory. The death cry from a dying Lygon cut through the air. Nero moved in the direction of the cry. This action gave Castilia the first quick strike. Nero glanced down at the thin red line on his wrist. Nero grinned up at her, and Castilia took a side step to the right. "Very good. Now let's not waste any time, shall we?" He wielded his Khopesh with undeniable deadly accuracy. He brought it down upon his opponent. Castilia blocked the blow by just seconds. Nero surprised her and kicked her in the ribs. The force of the blow took the air out of her. She stumbled backwards, trying to regain her balance. Nero advanced like a predator, seeing his wounded prey. She recovered. Out of the corner of his eye, Nero spied out of the window something he was not expecting. Elves. The two clashed swords again. It made a strong clanging noise like cymbals. So, did you also release the elves while you were on your quest, Legend? Nero spat out while he lunged and blocked an attack from Castilia's sharp weapon. He was waiting till she drew closer. Castilia lunged, dodged, and shook her head and laughed. Ha! No, that was my brother. Both Castilia and Nero brought down their swords together again. Clang! They each fought with a ferocious need to succeed. Castilia had never engaged someone in swordplay who was as good as or better than she, not including her instructors or brother. Nero brought the Khopesh down on her again. This time, she wasn't quick enough. The weapon's cut left its ugly mark across her right shoulder. She screamed in pain, but then chuckled and thought of herself. That will leave a scar. However, Nero used his black magic to read her thoughts and bluntly spoke curtly. Don't like my work? Now Castilia brought her sword up and replied back just as curtly. You call that work? Try some of this. She did a tumble set, and as she came back on her feet, moved her hand and swung her weapon so the blade sliced both his chin and neck. Castilia heard him wince in strained agony, but to his credit, he never dropped his weapon. Castilia now stole a glance out of the window and spied Leon. He and several others were attempting to bring the second to last Lygon down. The Lygon was angry and opened his mouth and breathed out fire. Her mouth fell wide open at one unfolded. Many allied soldiers didn't stand a chance and bravely fell from the intense heat. Nero took advantage of her momentary distraction. He slashed the Khopesh deep into her chest. Castilia looked down and felt a burning, ripping, agonizing pain. Satisfied at this deep wound his action had caused, Nero nodded to himself quite merrily. Castilia used her hand and examined the deep gash she sustained. Now that will leave a mark, she said defiantly as she pulled the Khopesh free from her body. She screamed in anguish and tossed the weapon back to its owner. Still feeling confident, Legend? How many lives have you got left? Come, you can tell me, he said, using a soothing, soft voice. Castilia soon began to feel a warm, flowing sensation as she was being healed. The area would still be tender, but at least she wouldn't have to have a bleeding wound. Enough. Can't say the same for you, she said flatly. While taking one swipe, she struck his unprotected thigh. Now it was his turn to stumble, but not enough to land on his rear. She went on the attack. When she came close enough, Nero shot a straight leg at her right in the exact spot where he had impaled her. She yelled out in pain. This blow caused her to fall on her back. Nero struggled up and limped over and now was standing over her. He kicked her weapon away. It sailed across the room with the scraping sound of stone and steel. Nero used both hands and brought the curved sword deep below her ribs. Castilia was consumed with pain. She wriggled every inch of her body and screamed in unimaginable pain. She thrust in an ill attempt to get away. Nero quickly removed his weapon. The blade was now stained red. Poor little Legend. This time there is nothing you can do. I will win, and you will die, which in itself will be a victory for me." He wielded the khopesh for a final death blow. As Castilia again began to feel the comforting healing coming upon her, she softly whispered, "Caballero, mi amigo." Over and over she repeated these words until Nero was within inches of her again, and an angry whinny of a horse was heard galloping not far away. Nero raised his head, but it was too late. The animal heeded the call of its master. The beautiful gray horse had its eyes bulged, sweat poured from its neck. It bit savagely in the direction of the prince. The brave steed charged and kicked Nero senseless. Once Nero was lying on the ground, the horse calmed itself down a little and trotted to Castilia. The horse sensed the need to help its friend to her feet. She embraced the animal in a hug, even though she felt she might pass out. "Gracias, mi amigo." She leaned in all her weight on the horse, and now made her way to where her sword had gotten when Nero kicked it away. The horse tossed its head and nudged her forward. "Let's end this," she said out loud to herself. Castilia gripped her sword tightly as she flashed back, remembering how her parents had died. Hatred burned in her at the one who was responsible. She could hear her mother's cries. Castilia was beginning to bring her blade down upon her senseless victim when he caught her off guard and opened his eyes. The legend froze for an instant. He couldn't have recovered that quickly. Black magic didn't even work that fast. Nero extended his hand and made a fist. He was choking her using black magic. Nero brushed himself off and examined her as if she were a caged animal. Castilia did everything she could think of. Her horse whinnied and began to charge, but one cold stare stopped the horse in its tracks. It understood evil magic and came near the legend when her body began to shake as her life was beginning to fade. The last thing she saw before the world went dark was Nero kneeling on one knee to her. He wore a large grin upon his face. So that is all the chapter for today. Thank you so much for listening. I so appreciate everybody that comes and comments on the video and watches these videos. It means so much to me. If you are interested in learning more about Legends Orbs of the Elements, I have a Facebook page dedicated to all things Legends Orbs of the Elements. I try to write an article Monday through Friday about different aspects of my book, which includes how I created the names of Leon and Castilia, another one where I talk about my baddies, Nero, Rifa, and Blinken. So if you are interested in that, go check it out. I try to keep my articles as spoiler-free as possible, so there's no chance of you getting spoiled. Also, if you are interested in picking up a copy of this book for yourself, so you can either read along with me or by yourself, this book can be purchased on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, Apple iBooks, and lots of other places books are sold. And as they say in my book, may the elements protect you, and I will see you guys tomorrow with another chapter. Bye-bye for now, everybody.